I've got girls as young as 14. Fresh ones arrive every Tuesday. The words slipped casually from Ethan Whitley's mouth as Blake, disguised as a pizza delivery driver, felt his stomach turn while the hidden microphone captured every syllable. What began as a desperate undercover operation was now yielding the most damning evidence Blake had gathered in his 6-month investigation into the trafficking ring, with 17 young women's lives hanging in the balance. Blake nodded sympathetically while his trembling fingers clutched the empty pizza box's only shield if Ethan discovered his true identity. Ethan leaned against the doorframe of his mansion, a smirk playing on his lips as he continued. You seem interested. First delivery guys usually just want their tip and leave. Blake swallowed hard, forcing a conspiratorial smile. Money's tight, always looking for ... opportunities. Ethan's eyes narrowed, calculating. Come inside while I get your money. Maybe we can discuss ... business. 6 months earlier, Blake Preston sat in his cramped office, staring at the stack of unpaid bills. The bold red final notice on his electric bill matched the color of his dwindling bank account. Being a private investigator in a city that didn't need one wasn't exactly lucrative. 3 years ago, he'd dropped out of the police academy 2 weeks before graduation. The decision still haunted him. But after witnessing his instructors cover up evidence against a fellow cadet's wealthy father, Blake couldn't bring himself to join a system he couldn't trust. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called, quickly hiding the bills under a folder. The woman who entered had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in days. Her clothes were immaculate, but her hands trembled. Are you the investigator? Her voice cracked. Blake Preston, he confirmed, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. My name is Rebecca Miller. My daughter Amy is missing. She clutched a photograph of a smiling teenager with auburn hair. She's been gone for 16 days. Have you contacted the police? Rebecca's laugh was bitter. They said she's 18 and probably ran off with a boyfriend. They won't even file a report. I'm sorry, but if the police won't, she wouldn't just leave, Rebecca interrupted. She was accepted to Columbia University on scholarship. She had plans. Her voice broke. Something happened to her. Blake sighed. Mrs. Miller, I'm not sure what I can do that the police can't. You can care, she said simply. I've saved $3,000. It's all I have. Blake studied the photo. Amy Miller had the same determined eyes as her mother. Something about her smile, so full of hope, reminded him of his younger sister before life had hardened her. When did you last hear from her? He asked, reaching for a notepad. Rebecca's shoulders relaxed slightly. So you'll help? Blake nodded, though a voice in his head questioned his decision. He had no resources, no backup, and honestly, no real experience with missing persons cases. But he had something the police didn't seem to have for Amy Miller: the willingness to look. Tell me everything, he said. As Rebecca spoke, Blake wondered if this case would finally give purpose to his failed law enforcement career or become one more failure to haunt him. Blake spent the next week piecing together Amy Miller's life. Her room was a typical teenager sanctuary: posters of bands, a bookshelf crammed with dog-eared paperbacks, and a desk covered with college brochures. She wanted to study international relations, Rebecca explained, fingers trailing over Amy's acceptance letter. She speaks 3 languages already. Blake nodded, examining Amy's laptop. With Rebecca's permission, he accessed her email and social media accounts. Nothing seemed unusual until he found messages from an account called Starmaker Productions. Did Amy mention wanting to model or act? Blake asked. Rebecca shook her head. No, but she was saving for college. She picked up odd jobs whenever she could. The messages promised quick money for photo shoots. The last one arranged a meeting at a coffee shop downtown. 3 days before Amy disappeared, Blake visited the coffee shop with Amy's photo. The barista recognized her. Yeah, she met some guy here. Older, kept talking about his connections in New York. Did you catch his name? Ethan, I think. Left a big tip. Real charmer. Blake spent the following days interviewing Amy's friends. One of them, Zoe, provided the breakthrough. Amy wasn't the only one, she said nervously. My cousin Madison was approached by the same guy. Madison went to a casting call and never came back. Her parents think she ran off to New York. When was this? 3 months ago. There's more though. I'm in a support group chat for people whose friends have disappeared. There are 5 of us now, all with the same story. Talent scout named Ethan, big promises. Then gone. Blake's investigation led him to an apartment complex where one of the missing girls had lived. While questioning neighbors, he overheard a conversation that made his blood run cold. She said some talent scout was taking her to New York. Ethan something. Whitley, an older woman, interjected. Ethan Whitley. Drives that fancy black Porsche, always hanging around college campuses. That night, Blake found 7 police reports across 3 counties, all young women, all last seen with a talent scout, all dismissed as runaways. Using social media and the limited database access his PI license afforded, Blake identified Ethan Whitley, 35, no criminal record, owner of several LLCs in a sprawling mansion in the wealthiest part of town. For 3 nights, Blake watched Whitley's mansion from his car. The pattern was disturbing. Young women arrived but didn't leave. Men in expensive suits came and went at all hours. Twice, he observed groups of girls being ushered into vans with tinted windows on the fourth night. As Blake photographed another van departure, a security guard spotted him. Blake barely escaped, his heart pounding as he realized what he'd stumbled into. This wasn't just about Amy Miller anymore. This was human trafficking, hiding in plain sight behind wealth and influence, and Blake was in way over his head. "You're insane," Samantha Walker said, sliding the surveillance photos back across the table. The diner was nearly empty at 1 a.m., perfect for discreet conversations. "You need to take this to the FBI." Blake had known Samantha since the academy. She'd graduated and spent 5 years as a detective before quitting. Disillusioned by departmental politics and systemic corruption, with what evidence Blake countered? Suspicious fans, girls who, officially, are just runaways. The local cops won't touch it, and the feds need more to open an investigation. "So your plan is to what, single-handedly bring down a trafficking ring?" "I just need evidence, concrete proof of what Whitley's doing." Samantha stirred her coffee, her expression troubled. "Blake, these people are dangerous. If they catch you, ... I know. But what choice do I have? 17 girls, Sam. 17 families wondering if their daughters are alive." Samantha sighed. "What do you need?" "Equipment, contacts, advice." For the next hour they strategized Samantha. New people who could provide surveillance gear without questions. Blake would need a recording device, hidden camera, and a bulletproof cover story. "Delivery drivers," Samantha suggested. "They're invisible. No one pays attention to them." "Pizza," Blake agreed. "Everyone orders pizza." Over the following weeks, they built Blake's cover identity. Samantha modified a professional-grade recording device to fit under a pizza delivery uniform. Blake studied Whitley's mansion, noting camera positions and security patterns. "We need to get him talking," Samantha advised during a practice run. "Confessions are the gold standard, but don't push too hard, just enough to get him comfortable." They discovered Whitley regularly ordered from Giacomo's pizzeria across town. Blake practiced making deliveries to build confidence, studying how actual delivery drivers behaved. "Remember, if anything feels wrong, you leave," Samantha insisted, adjusting Blake's hidden camera. No heroics, but their first 2 attempts failed. Blake couldn't get past the gate as security turned away all deliveries, directing them to the service entrance where only staff received packages. Then came their break. Samantha, monitoring the pizzeria's online orders, spotted one going to Whitley's address. "Tonight's the night," she texted Blake. 30 minutes later, Blake intercepted the actual delivery driver 2 blocks from Whitley's house. "Health department." He flashed a fake badge. "We've had reports of contamination from Giacomo's. I need to confiscate this order." The driver, a teenager more concerned about his shift ending than questioning authority, surrendered the pizza without argument as Blake drove toward Whitley's mansion. Samantha's voice came through his earpiece. Testing, cameras working. "Remember, get what we need and get out. If anything goes wrong, I'm 3 minutes away." Blake adjusted his cap and checked the recording equipment one last time. "Let's catch this bastard," he murmured, turning onto Whitley's street. Blake's first attempt to infiltrate Whitley's mansion had been meticulously planned, yet embarrassingly brief. He'd arrived with a fake pizza delivery, only to be stopped at the gate by an armed guard who checked a tablet before shaking his head. "No deliveries scheduled," the guard had said dismissively. "Try another house." The second attempt came a week later. Samantha had discovered Whitley was hosting a party, the perfect opportunity for Blake to slip in among legitimate delivery drivers. He'd even managed to get through the gate this time, but was redirected to a service entrance where a stern-faced housekeeper intercepted all deliveries. "Mr. Whitley doesn't accept unsolicited deliveries," she'd stated flatly. Security protocol. Sitting in his car outside a convenience store, Blake replayed both failures in his mind. 6 weeks had passed since he'd taken Rebecca Miller's case, and he was no closer to finding Amy or gathering evidence against Whitley. His phone vibrated with a text from Samantha. "Any update?" Blake sighed and responded, "Nothing. Can't get close enough." As Blake drove home, frustration gnawed at him. Time was running out both for the missing women and financially for Blake. Rebecca's money would only cover another week of investigation at most. Then came a breakthrough from an unexpected source. Zoe, Amy's friend, called with news. "One of the girls from our support group got a text from her missing friend," she said, voice trembling with excitement. Just 2 words. "Help, Whitley," then nothing. The message confirmed Blake's suspicions but did nothing to solve his access problem. He needed a new approach. The answer came 3 days later. Blake had been studying Whitley's patterns, noting his regular food deliveries. Every Thursday night, Whitley ordered from Giacomo's pizzeria, the same high-end place each time. "We need to intercept that order," Blake told Samantha during their meeting at the diner. "How? We can't hack their system." "We don't need to," Blake replied. "We just need to know when he orders." Samantha spent the next evening in her car outside Giacomo's, watching for Whitley's order. Sure enough, at 7:45 p.m., she spotted the distinctive address on the delivery screen while pretending to examine the menu. "Order placed." she texted Blake. Delivery guy leaving in 15. This time, Blake was ready. Dressed in a convincing Giacomo's uniform purchased from a former employee, he positioned himself along the driver's route. When the actual delivery driver stopped for gas, Blake approached with a confident smile. "Hey man, Ryan from Giacomo sent me that Whitley order. The guy's a massive tipper but hates when his pizza's late. I'm headed that way, so Ryan asked if I could take it for you." The driver, new and eager to please his boss, hesitated only briefly before handing over the pizza. "Sure man, tell Ryan I owe him one." As Blake drove toward Whitley's mansion, adrenaline surged through him. The gatehouse came into view, and he steeled himself. "Delivery for Mr. Whitley," he said, holding up the pizza box. The guard checked his tablet, then nodded. "He's expecting you. Go straight to the main entrance." Blake's pulse raced as the gate swung open. 6 months of investigation, 2 failed attempts, and now finally he was in. Blake's knuckles whitened around the pizza box as he approached Whitley's front door. The mansion loomed over him, its windows like watching eyes. Security cameras tracked his movement up the curved driveway, their small red lights blinking in silent judgment. "You're just a delivery guy," he reminded himself. "Act normal." He rang the doorbell, and through his earpiece, Samantha whispered, "Camera and mic are working. Stay calm." The door opened, revealing Ethan Whitley himself, tall and tanned, with the polished smile of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. In person he looked even more like his social media photos. Perfect teeth, designer clothes, eyes that calculated your worth in seconds. "Giacomo's," Blake said, keeping his voice neutral. "One large Tuscan special." "Come in," Whitley said, stepping aside. "I'm in the middle of a call. I'll grab my wallet." Blake hesitated only briefly before stepping into the marble-floored entryway. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and abstract sculptures dotted the space like alien sentinels. Everything screamed wealth and something else Blake couldn't immediately identify. Whitley gestured toward a side table. "Set it there. I'll be right back." As Whitley disappeared down a hallway, Blake quickly surveyed his surroundings. The mansion's interior was museum-like, beautiful but sterile. No personal photos, no evidence of genuine living. Through an open doorway, Blake glimpsed what appeared to be an office. Inside, a wall of monitors displayed security feeds from around the property. On another wall hung a large map marked with pins and notations. Blake strained to hear Whitley's phone conversation from the adjacent room. Arrival on Tuesday as planned. Yes, all Eastern European premium merchandise. The clients are already committed. Blake's skin crawled at the casual dehumanization in Whitley's tone. On a nearby desk, Blake spotted a stack of passports. Carefully, he angled his body to allow the hidden camera to capture the image while maintaining the appearance of a bored delivery driver. A door slammed somewhere in the house, followed by female voices speaking in what sounded like Russian. Blake tensed as footsteps approached from another hallway. A young woman appeared briefly at the end of the corridor, escorted by a burly security guard. Her eyes met Blake's for just an instant, frightened, defeated eyes that sent a chill through him. Then the guard ushered her through another door, and they were gone. Whitley returned, still on his phone. Quality assurance is my priority. I stand behind my product. He covered the phone's microphone and smiled at Blake. "Sorry about that. Business calls. You know how it is." Blake nodded noncommittally. Whitley ended his call and reached for his wallet. "New guy. Haven't seen you before." "Just started last week," Blake replied, heart hammering against the recording device strapped to his chest. "Well, you made good time. I hate cold pizza." Whitley pulled out a $100 bill. "Keep the change." "Thanks," Blake said, accepting the money with a carefully measured smile. Whitley leaned against the wall, studying Blake with sudden interest. "You know, you don't look like the typical delivery guy." Blake's mouth went dry. "Just paying my way through college." "Smart man," Whitley nodded approvingly. "What are you studying?" "Business," Blake replied, the lie coming easily. "Entrepreneurship, specifically." Something shifted in Whitley's expression, a predatory interest that made Blake's skin crawl. "Entrepreneurship, huh? Always looking for opportunities." Blake forced himself to maintain eye contact. "Always." Whitley gestured toward the pizza. "Join me for a slice. I hate eating alone." Every instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea, but Blake knew this was exactly the opening he needed. Samantha's voice whispered urgently in his ear, "Be careful, but this is gold." "Sure," Blake shrugged. "My next delivery isn't for 20 minutes." Whitley led him to a sleek dining room dominated by a glass table. As they sat, Blake noticed a security monitor embedded in the wall, displaying various areas of the property. "So," Whitley said, opening the pizza box, "delivery driver by night, entrepreneur by day, ambitious, gotta hustle," Blake replied, accepting a slice. "Economy's tough." Whitley laughed. "Only for those thinking small. Real money isn't in delivering products, it's in owning the supply chain. That your business supply chain management, in a manner of speaking." Whitley studied Blake. "I provide specialized products to discerning clients." "Human capital," Whitley replied, his eyes never leaving Blake's face. "The most valuable commodity in the world." Blake took a bite of pizza to hide his disgust. Sounds lucrative. Beyond your imagination, Whitley leaned forward. Take today's shipment, 17 units, each generating monthly revenue with minimal overhead, pure profit. Units, Blake asked, knowing exactly what Whitley meant but needing him to be explicit. Girls, Whitley said casually. Eastern European, Asian, domestic. Different markets have different preferences. Blake struggled to keep his expression neutral. And these girls, they work for you. Whitley laughed. They belong to me, at least. Until their contracts are paid off, which, of course, never happens. How do you find them? Various channels. College campuses are fertile ground, ambitious girls with financial problems. Social media makes it laughably easy. I promise fame, modeling contracts, connections. Whitley smirked. You'd be amazed how many fall for it. What about families looking for them? Most are written off as runaways. Police don't look hard for adult women who choose to disappear. The younger ones require more ... finesse. Blake's hand trembled slightly as he reached for another slice. And you never get caught. I have friends in important places, Whitley replied, his voice hardening slightly. People who ensure problems disappear. Smart business model, Blake managed. Indeed, Whitley's eyes narrowed. You seem unusually interested for a delivery driver. Blake shrugged. Just trying to learn. Like I said, economy's tough. Perhaps you're in the wrong line of work, Whitley suggested. I occasionally need reliable men for special deliveries. Before Blake could respond, Whitley's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowning. Excuse me, he said, stepping away. I need to take this. Blake exhaled slowly, using the moment to compose himself. Through his earpiece, Samantha whispered, You're doing great. We've got solid evidence. Consider an exit strategy. Whitley's voice from the adjacent room grew heated. What do you mean the order's wrong? I specifically requested. He paused. Wen checked the call log. Blake's stomach dropped. They were discussing the pizza order. Whitley returned, his friendly demeanor replaced by cold suspicion. Interesting situation. Giacomo's claims they sent a driver 20 minutes ago, yet here you are. Blake forced a laugh. Man, their management is a mess. I told them I was running late from another delivery and asked if I could take this one, since it was on my route home. Guess the manager forgot to update the system. Whitley studied him, eyes narrowed. Let me see your delivery app. Don't have one, Blake replied smoothly. I'm not on the digital system yet, still training. Old school paper receipts. He patted his pockets, which I apparently left in the car. Whitley's posture relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained watchful. What did you say your name was? Didn't say, Blake replied. It's Mike. The mansion's front doorbell rang, making both men jump. Whitley checked his security panel. Ah, my associate has arrived. He gave Blake a thin smile. Wait here. The moment Whitley left, Samantha hissed in Blake's ear. Get out now. I don't like this. Blake was torn. He had recorded evidence of Whitley's trafficking operation, but nothing specific about Amy Miller or the other local girls. He needed more. Quickly he used his phone to photograph the map and documents visible in Whitley's office. As he angled for a better shot of the passport stack, heavy footsteps approached. Blake pocketed his phone just as Whitley returned with another man, tall, muscular, with a military-style haircut and cold eyes that immediately assessed Blake as a threat. Victor, this is Mike. He delivers pizza and asks a lot of questions. Victor didn't smile. Is that right? Blake stood, maintaining an easy posture despite his racing heart. Just making conversation. Thanks for the pizza and tip, Mr. Whitley. I should head out. Actually, Whitley said, Victor has some questions about Giacomo's delivery procedures. Blake forced a confused laugh. Delivery procedures? Man, I just doctor pizzas from point A to point B, not much to explain. Then explain how you ended up with my order when another driver was already en route, Whitley said softly. Blake edged toward the door. Like I said, scheduling mix-up. Look, I've got other deliveries. Victor moved with surprising speed for his size, positioning himself between Blake and the exit. Show me your delivery ID. Left it in the car with the receipts, Blake said, mentally calculating his odds against the larger man. Convenient, Whitley remarked. Victor, why don't you walk our friend to his car to retrieve his ID? The implied threat hung in the air. Blake knew if he left with Victor, he wouldn't return. Actually, he said, pulling out his phone, I just got a message from my boss. Emergency delivery downtown. Rain check on that ID check. Victor looked to Whitley, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Of course, Whitley said smoothly. Another time. 3 months earlier, Blake had stood in Amy Miller's bedroom, trying to understand who she was from the fragments of her life left behind. College brochures from Columbia and NYU were stacked neatly on her desk. A corkboard displayed photos of Amy with friends, hiking, at a debate tournament, studying in a cafe. She was always organized, Rebecca had said. Her fingers tracing a photo of her daughter had her whole life planned out. Blake had nodded, examining Amy's laptop. Her browser history showed research on scholarships, summer internships, and most recently modeling gigs. The email thread with Starmaker Productions had been Blake's first real lead. The messages promised a unique opportunity for select, college-bound women with excellent compensation for minimal time investment. Amy's final email had confirmed a meeting at Westside Cafe. Blake had visited the cafe the next day, showing Amy's photo to the staff. Only one barista remembered her pretty girl auburn hair. Yeah, she met some older guy here, real smooth talker. Kept saying she had to look, whatever that means. Did you catch his name? Ethan, I think. Left his business card. Had a star logo on it. Following the Star Maker lead, Blake had discovered a defunct website and a temporary office space rented. Under a shell company, the property manager remembered Ethan Whitley. Charming guy, paid 6 months in advance, barely used the space. The breakthrough had come from Zoe, Amy's friend. I found something weird, she'd told Blake, meeting him at a park bench near campus. After Amy disappeared, I started a support group online for friends of missing girls. We have 5 members now. She'd shown Blake her phone, scrolling through similar stories. Talented young women approached by a talent scout named Ethan, promised modeling or acting opportunities, then vanishing. They're all from different schools, but the pattern's identical, Zoe had explained. Madison went missing 3 months before Amy, then Lily, then Tasha, then Amy, then Jade, all within the last year. Blake had compiled a timeline, noting the escalating frequency of disappearances. When he cross-referenced with local police reports, he found 17 cases across 3 counties that matched the pattern, all dismissed as runaways despite family insistence that something was wrong. His investigation had led him to Jessica Lynn, who had narrowly escaped becoming another victim. He seemed legitimate at first, Jessica had explained in the campus library, nervously checking over her shoulder as she spoke. Had business cards, a portfolio of his clients' work, everything. Said he could get me a modeling contract in New York. What changed your mind? The contract. It required me to surrender my passport for visa processing and sign over power of attorney in case of international bookings. When I hesitated, he got intense. Said the opportunity would disappear if I didn't sign immediately. What did you do? I told him I needed to show my dad, who's a lawyer. Ethan got really angry, said I was wasting his time. I left and he kept calling for days. Then he just stopped. A week later, Jade disappeared. Blake had shown Jessica photos of the missing women. Yes, that's Amy, she'd confirmed. I saw her at Ethan's office when I was there. She was signing papers. Did she seem distressed? No. Excited. She said she was going to New York that weekend for her first shoot. That night, Blake had driven to Whitley's mansion for the first time, parking across the street to observe a black Porsche had pulled into the driveway. Ethan Whitley returning home. Minutes later, a van with tinted windows had arrived. Blake had watched, photographing as 3 young women were escorted inside. One of them had auburn hair, just like Amy Miller. Blake followed Victor and Whitley toward the front door, maintaining a casual demeanor despite the alarm bells screaming in his head. Through his earpiece, Samantha was repeatedly urging him to leave immediately. Well, thanks for the pizza and conversation, Blake said cheerfully. Never had a customer invite me in before. Whitley smiled, didn't reach his eyes. I'm selective about who I spend time with. As they reached the foyer, Blake noticed a small monitor on a side table displaying a schedule. One line caught his attention. Shipment departure, 11:30 p.m. Baltimore route. It was currently 8:24 p.m. Blake made a split-second decision. If he left now, they had evidence of Whitley's trafficking operation but nothing concrete about Amy Miller or the current victims' locations. The shipment mentioned on the schedule was happening tonight, which meant the women were still on the property. Actually, Blake said, patting his pockets, I think I dropped my car keys when I set down the pizza. Mind if I check the dining room? Whitley hesitated, then nodded to Victor. Go with him. As Blake retraced his steps, his mind raced through options. The recording device was capturing everything, but he needed to find where the women were being held in the dining room. Blake made a show of looking under the table while surreptitiously studying the security monitor on the wall. It displayed rotating views of the property, including what appeared to be a basement area with several doors. Found them, Blake announced, holding up his actual keys. As they returned to the foyer, Blake deliberately stumbled against Victor, apologizing profusely. The distraction allowed him to glimpse a security keypad beside a heavy door near the kitchen. Careful, Victor growled, steadying Blake with a grip that was slightly too tight, near the front entrance. Blake heard female voices again, this time clearer, coming from downstairs. One spoke in accented English. When do we leave for New York? A male voice responded harshly. Shut up and pack. Blake's resolve hardened. Those women needed help now, not after hours of police bureaucracy. But Samantha's warning rang in his ears. No heroics. At the door, Whitley extended his hand. It was interesting meeting you, Mike. Perhaps we'll see each other again. Blake shook Whitley's hand, knowing it was a veiled threat, looking forward to it. Outside, the night air felt electric with tension. Blake walked toward his car, aware of Victor watching from the doorway. As he opened his car door, he heard Samantha's voice through the earpiece. Blake, we have enough. Get out of there now. Blake sat behind the wheel, the engine idling. He had two choices: drive away with the evidence they'd gathered, or find a way back inside to locate the trafficking victims before they were moved. The responsible decision was clearly take the recording to the authorities and let them handle the raid. That approach was safer, more likely to result in Whitley's conviction, and wouldn't risk the operation they'd spent months building. But Blake couldn't shake the image of Amy Miller's mother, waiting for news of her daughter, or the glimpse of frightened eyes he'd seen inside the mansion. If the shipment left tonight, how many more women would disappear into Whitley's network, perhaps never to be found? Blake put the car in gear and drove away from the mansion, watching Victor retreat inside through his rearview mirror. 3 blocks later, he pulled over and turned to Samantha, who was waiting in her car. "I'm going back in," he said firmly. "Blake, no, they're moving the girls tonight. We might not get another chance." Samantha's expression hardened. "This is insane. We have a confession on tape and no specific victims identified, no proof of Amy's location, and nothing to stop that shipment tonight," Blake countered. "I saw the schedule. They're moving the girls at 11:30, so we call the FBI now. And by the time they get a warrant, those women will be gone." Blake checked his watch. "I need 20 minutes inside that house. The evidence we have is circumstantial. I need photos of the victims, documentation, something concrete." Samantha ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "And how exactly do you plan to get back in?" Blake pulled out his phone, showing her the security monitor images he'd managed to capture. "There's a basement area with minimal surveillance, and I saw a service entrance near the kitchen. This is exactly what I warned you against," Samantha said, but her resolve was weakening. "What's your plan?" "Distraction at the front gate. Then I slip in through the service entrance." The recording equipment caught images of the keypad. It's a standard 6-digit code. "I'm betting it's Whitley's birthday or something similarly egotistical." 15 minutes later, Blake crouched in the shadows along the perimeter of Whitley's estate. Samantha had created the promised distraction, a minor fender bender at the front gate that had drawn the security guard's attention. Blake slipped over the fence at his predetermined spot, using the landscaping for cover as he made his way toward the service entrance. The mansion's exterior lighting created patches of deep shadow that he utilized to avoid the security cameras at the service door. Blake examined the keypad, 6 digits. He tried Whitley's birth date from the background check they'd run. 051985. Access denied. He tried the mansion's street address, 471,809. The light turned green, and the door unlocked with a soft click. Inside, Blake found himself in a service corridor leading to the kitchen. He moved silently, listening for any movement. The house seemed eerily quiet, following his mental map based on the security feeds. Blake located the staircase to the basement. A sign on the door read "Authorized personnel only." As he descended, voices became clearer, female voices speaking in various languages, punctuated by a man giving orders in English. "1 bag only, no phones. Anyone hiding electronics will regret it." At the bottom of the stairs, Blake peered around the corner. A long hallway stretched before him, lined with several doors. At the far end, a guard stood outside what appeared to be a large common room, where Blake could see several young women gathering belongings. He needed evidence. Pulling out his phone, Blake began taking photos, careful to keep the flash disabled. He captured images of the hallway, the rooms, the guard. Moving closer, Blake positioned himself to see into the common room. His heart nearly stopped when he spotted a young woman with auburn hair. Amy Miller. She looked thinner than in her photos, her expression vacant as she mechanically folded clothes. Blake photographed everything, making sure Amy was clearly identifiable. As he adjusted for a better angle, his elbow knocked against a metal trash can. The noise, though slight, echoed in the quiet hallway. The guard looked up, frowning. "Who's there?" Blake pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath. The guard's footsteps approached slowly, cautiously. Trapped in the stairwell with nowhere to hide, Blake prepared to confront the guard, but a shout from the common room provided unexpected salvation. "Pavel, we need help here. One of the girls is having a panic attack." The footsteps retreated hastily. Blake exhaled slowly, then continued his documentation, capturing every detail of the basement operation. On a desk near the stairwell, he found a clipboard with what appeared to be a manifest: names, ages, countries, with origin and purchase prices for each woman. Amy's name was on the list. Blake photographed the manifest page by page, his hands shaking slightly with adrenaline. Each document further confirmed the trafficking operation's scope: transportation routes, client information, payment structures. The evidence was damning. Through his earpiece, Samantha's voice came urgently. "Blake, security is heading back to their posts. You need to leave now." He'd been in the basement for nearly 15 minutes, longer than planned. With one final look at Amy and the other women, Blake steeled himself against the impulse to attempt an immediate rescue. That would put everyone at risk. "Help is coming," he whispered, though no one could hear him. Blake retraced his steps up the stairwell. At the top, he paused to listen. Voices were approaching from the kitchen. He ducked into an adjacent hallway, pressing himself against the wall as 2 security guards passed. "Whitley wants extra men for tonight's transport," one said. Says the new merchandise is high value, more babysitting. The other replied. At least the Baltimore warehouse has better security than this place. Baltimore warehouse. Another piece of information for the authorities. Blake waited until their footsteps faded before continuing toward the service entrance. He was nearly there when a door opened directly in front of him. Blake froze as Victor emerged, speaking on a phone. Checked the delivery company. No driver, named Mike or matching his description. Victor stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening as he spotted Blake. For a second, neither man moved. Mutual recognition paralyzing them both. Then training kicked in. Blake lunged forward, driving his shoulder into Victor's midsection. The larger man stumbled backward, dropping his phone with a clatter. Blake didn't wait for him to recover. He sprinted toward the service entrance, abandoning stealth for speed. Behind him, Victor shouted, "Intruder, south wing." Blake reached the service door, yanking it open and bursting into the night air. An alarm began blaring. Victor had triggered the security system. Samantha. Blake gasped into his microphone. Cover blown. Meeting at extraction point B, he raced across the manicured lawn, heading for the fence section they'd identified as the weakest point. Floodlights suddenly illuminated the grounds, exposing him in the open space. A security guard appeared ahead, drawing a weapon. Blake changed direction, diving behind a stone fountain as a shot rang out. Marble chips exploded near his head. "Armed guards," he hissed to Samantha. "They're shooting." Blake scrambled low along a hedgerow, using the decorative landscaping as cover. Another guard appeared to his left, and Blake had to double back, losing precious seconds. The fence was still 30 yards away when he heard dogs barking. Whitley's security was deploying canine units. A gap in the hedge provided a straight shot to the fence. Blake took a deep breath and sprinted, pushing his body to its limit as shouts and barking grew closer. He hit the fence at full speed, fingers grasping the chain links as he pulled himself upward. Halfway up, a spotlight found him, pinning him in its harsh glare. "Stop or we'll shoot," a voice commanded. Blake pulled himself over the top of the fence as another shot rang out. A burning sensation across his arm told him the bullet had grazed him, but adrenaline muted the pain. He dropped to the ground on the other side, rolling to absorb the impact, then sprinted toward the street where Samantha waited in her car engine. Running, Blake yanked open the passenger door and threw himself inside. "Go!" Samantha floored the accelerator, and the car shot forward just as security guards reached the fence. "You're bleeding," Samantha noted grimly, taking a sharp turn onto a main road. "Just a graze," Blake said, checking that the recording device and his phone were intact. "Did you get my messages about the basement in Baltimore? Everything transmitted clearly." "Blake, you're lucky to be alive." Samantha took another turn, eyes darting to the rearview mirror. "We're being followed." Black SUV, 2 cars back. Blake twisted to look through the rear window. He spotted the vehicle-tinted windows, high beams on, gaining rapidly. "Whitley security," he confirmed. "They must have called in the plate number." Samantha accelerated, weaving through traffic with precision born from her police training. "We need to lose them before we head to the safe house. My gun's in the glove compartment." Blake retrieved the weapon, checking that it was loaded. "Let's try not to need this." The SUV closed the gap, now directly behind them. Inside, Blake could make out Tim and the driver and Victor in the passenger seat. "They're not going to let us go easily," Samantha muttered, taking a hard right onto a less populated street. "Call Agent Davis, number's in my phone." Blake grabbed Samantha's phone, finding the contact for FBI agent Catherine Davis, their emergency backup plan. As he dialed, the SUV rammed them from behind, jolting both forward against their seatbelts. "They're trying to run us off the road." Samantha fought to maintain control as the car fishtailed. The call connected. "Davis, this is Blake Preston," he said rapidly. "We have an emergency situation connected to the Whitley trafficking case. We have evidence, but we're being pursued by Whitley's men." "Location?" Davis asked crisply. Blake looked for street signs, as Samantha took another turn, heading east on Palmer Street, approaching downtown. "Police units are being dispatched. Keep moving toward the federal building if possible." The SUV rammed them again, harder this time. The impact sent Samantha's car scraping along a row of parked vehicles, showering sparks in their wake. "We might not make it that far," Blake said, ending the call as Samantha regained control. She glanced at him. "I know these streets better than they do. Hold on." Samantha made a sudden left turn into an alley barely wider than the car itself. The SUV attempted to follow but was too wide, scraping against the brick walls before backing out. "They'll go around," Samantha said, speeding through the narrow passage. "We need to disappear before they cut us off." The alley opened onto a street lined with nightclubs and restaurants. Samantha immediately turned into a parking garage, cutting her lights as they descended to the lower level. "They'll expect us to keep running," she explained, pulling into a space between 2 large vans. "We wait here until Davis's people arrive." Blake's arm throbbed where the bullet had grazed him. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the pain was making itself known. Samantha noticed his discomfort. "Let me see that." She examined the wound in the dim garage lighting. "Not too deep." First aid kit's in the trunk. As she retrieved the kit, Blake transferred the photos from his phone to a secure cloud server. They'd set up insurance in case anything happened to the devices. Evidence is backed up, he told her as she returned and began cleaning his wound. Everything from Whitley's confession to the manifest and photos of Amy. Good Samantha wrapped a bandage around his arm. Davis is solid. Once she sees this evidence, she'll move fast. A screech of tires echoed through the garage. Headlights swept across the walls as a vehicle descended the ramp. Down, Samantha hissed, pulling Blake low in their seats. The black SUV prowled slowly through the garage level, its occupants scanning each row of vehicles. Blake held his breath as it passed within 20 feet of their hiding spot. After what seemed like hours, the SUV ascended to the next level. Blake exhaled shakily. They're persistent, he whispered. Whitley's got a lot to lose. Samantha checked her watch. FBI should have units in the area by now. We need to. Her words cut off as the SUV suddenly reappeared, lights off, rolling silently toward their position. They spotted us, Blake realized. We need to move now. Samantha gunned the engine, reversing sharply, then accelerating forward, narrowly missing the SUV. Victor's face was visible for an instant, cold eyes locking with Blake's as they sped past. They shot up the exit ramp, tires squealing against concrete. Behind them, the SUV gave chase. There, Blake pointed to a police cruiser parked outside a restaurant. Samantha swerved toward it, honking frantically. The officers looked up as Samantha screeched to a halt. The SUV abruptly changed direction, disappearing down a side street. FBI agent Davis sent us, Blake called to the confused officers. We need an escort to the federal building. We're witnesses in a human trafficking case. 20 minutes later, Blake and Samantha sat in Agent Catherine Davis's office, surrounded by FBI personnel. Davis, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s with calculating eyes, examined the evidence on her laptop. The recording is crystal clear, she noted, replaying Whitley's casual admission about owning women. These photos from the basement, ... She paused on an image of Amy Miller. This matches the missing person report from Rebecca Miller. 17 women total, Blake explained. According to the manifest, they're being transported tonight to a warehouse in Baltimore. Davis nodded to an assistant, who immediately left the room to relay instructions. We're coordinating with the Baltimore field office. If they're moving tonight, we'll intercept. She turned back to Blake. What made you investigate Whitley in the first place? Blake explained Rebecca Miller's case, the pattern of disappearances, and the months of surveillance that led to tonight's operation. It took an enormous risk, Davis observed. But this evidence is exactly what we needed. We've had suspicions about Whitley for months, but could never get close enough for concrete evidence. You knew about him? Samantha asked, incredulous. We had fragments, financial irregularities, suspicious travel patterns, connections to known traffickers overseas. But Whitley was careful, and he has friends in high places. Davis's expression hardened, including, we believe, someone inside law enforcement who's been protecting him. That explains why the missing persons reports were dismissed, Blake realized. Exactly. Davis closed the laptop, which is why this operation needs to be contained. Until we move, no one outside this room knows the full scope. An agent entered, handing Davis a document. She scanned it, then looked up. Judge Sullivan has signed off on the warrants. We're moving on both locations simultaneously, Whitley's mansion and the Baltimore warehouse. She studied Blake. You should get that arm looked at by our medic. I'm fine, Blake insisted. What about the women? What about Amy? Our priority is securing their safety, Davis assured him. We have victim specialists standing by. I want to be there, Blake said firmly. When you raid Whitley's mansion? Davis shook her head. Absolutely not. This is now a federal operation. Amy Miller's mother hired me to find her daughter, Blake countered. I promised I would. Besides, I've seen the layout of the house, the security systems, where the women are being held. Davis considered this, then sighed. You can accompany the tactical team, but you stay in the command vehicle until the premises are secured. That's non-negotiable. Blake nodded, relief washing over him. After months of investigation, they were finally closing in on Whitley and his operation. Justice for Amy and the other victims was within reach. There's one more thing you should know, he told Davis. Whitley mentioned having friends in important places. If he has connections in law enforcement, he might have connections in government, or judiciary as well. We're aware of the possibility, Davis replied grimly. Which is why we're executing these warrants tonight, before anyone can tip him off. The FBI command vehicle was positioned 2 blocks from Whitley's mansion, hidden behind a screen of trees. Inside, Blake watched the operation unfold through multiple monitors displaying feeds from agents' body cameras. Alpha team in position at the main gate, a voice reported over the radio. Beta team at the east perimeter. Agent Davis sat beside Blake, coordinating with the tactical commander. All units hold for simultaneous breach with Baltimore team. The clock read 11:18 p.m. They had intercepted the operation just in time, less than 15 minutes before the scheduled shipment departure. Baltimore team in position, another voice confirmed. Davis nodded. Execute on my mark. 3-2. execute. On the monitors, Blake watched FBI tactical teams breach Whitley's gate, moving with practiced efficiency toward the mansion. Simultaneously, agents scaled the fence at predetermined points, creating a complete perimeter. Movement at the service entrance, an agent reported. Multiple subjects loading females into vehicles. Blake leaned forward, tension coiling in his chest as he spotted Amy among the women being hurried toward a waiting van. Subjects are armed, came another report. Repeat, tangos have weapons. The night erupted in controlled chaos. FBI agents announced their presence with overwhelming force, converging on the loading area. On the monitors, Blake saw Whitley's security personnel raise weapons. Drop your weapons, the agents commanded. For a heartbeat it seemed the standoff might dissolve into violence. Then one of Whitley's men lowered his gun, followed by another. Within moments the security team was on the ground, being handcuffed. "Where's Whitley?" Blake asked, scanning the monitors. "Main residence breach in progress." The tactical commander reported. Another feed showed agents entering the mansion, clearing rooms methodically. The women from the basement were being guided to safety, FBI victim specialists already providing blankets and initial care. "Target located," came a terse update. "Master bedroom, east wing." The body camera feed showed Ethan Whitley being placed in handcuffs, his expression one of cold fury rather than surprise. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he said to the arresting agents, voice eerily calm. "I'll be out before morning." Baltimore team reports success, an analyst announced. Warehouse secured. 8 additional victims recovered, all alive. Up. Collective exhale of relief filled the command vehicle. Davis turned to Blake. "We got them all," she said, allowing herself a small smile, including Amy Miller. Blake felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a burden he'd carried since taking Rebecca's case 6 months ago. "I want to see her," he said. Davis hesitated, then nodded. "Once the scene is secure." 20 minutes later, Blake stood near the FBI medical triage area, established on Whitley's immaculate lawn. Agents led the rescued women from the mansion in small groups, each victim accompanied by a specialist trained in trauma support. Blake spotted Amy immediately. She looked thinner than her photos, with dark circles under her eyes, but physically unharmed. She clutched a blanket around her shoulders, gaze darting nervously around the unfamiliar faces. "Amy," he called gently. She turned, confusion evident in her expression. "Do I know you? I'm Blake Preston. Your mother hired me to find you." Amy's composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "My mom. She's been looking for me every day since you disappeared," Blake assured her. "She never gave up." Amy's tears flowed freely now. "They told me no one was looking, that no one cared." A victim specialist approached, placing a supportive hand on Amy's shoulder. "We need to get you checked by medical staff, then you can call your mother." As Amy was led away, Blake caught sight of Whitley being placed in an FBI transport vehicle. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, Whitley's filled with cold hatred, Blake's with the satisfaction of justice served. Blake stood in the hospital corridor, watching through a glass partition as Rebecca Miller embraced her daughter for the first time in 6 months. Their tearful reunion brought a lump to his throat, the tangible result of months of uncertainty and investigation. "You did good work," Agent Davis said, appearing beside him. 25 women rescued between both locations. Whitley's operation is completely dismantled. "What about his friends in high places?" Blake asked. "We're already unraveling that network. 2 police lieutenants have been taken into custody for obstruction of justice. There's evidence of a judge taking bribes, and we're investigating a deputy mayor." Davis's expression was grim, but satisfied. "This case will have ripple effects for months." Inside the room, Rebecca noticed Blake through the window and motioned for him to join them. Amy looked up as he entered, her eyes clearer than they had been at the mansion. "Mom says you never stop looking," she said quietly. Blake shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Just doing my job." Rebecca shook her head. "The police gave up. Everyone gave up except you." "How did you find me?" Amy asked. Blake explained the investigation in simple terms, omitting the more harrowing details of his infiltration of Whitley's mansion. "The other girls," Amy said suddenly, "are they okay?" "All safe," Blake assured her. "Medical staff are checking everyone, and the FBI has victim advocates working with each person." Amy nodded, relief evident in her expression. "We tried to support each other in there. Some of the newer girls... They were so scared." A soft knock at the door preceded the entrance of a trauma counselor. "Amy, if you're feeling up to it, we'd like to ask you some questions that might help with the case." Rebecca tensed protectively, but Amy squeezed her mother's hand. "It's okay, Mom. I want to help make sure Whitley never does this to anyone else." Blake excused himself, stepping into the corridor where Samantha waited. "Rebecca wanted to give you this," Samantha said, handing him an envelope. Inside was a check for $3,000, the remainder of Rebecca's savings that she'd promised as payment. Blake stared at the check, then glanced back at Amy and Rebecca through the window. After a moment's hesitation, he folded the check and slipped it into his pocket. He'd consider what to do with it later. "The media's already running with the story," Samantha reported, showing him her phone. Headlines announced the trafficking bust and Whitley's arrest. You're about to be very popular with desperate families looking for missing loved ones. The thought was overwhelming. Blake had barely kept his struggling pie business afloat before this case. Now he faced the prospect of more families like Rebecca Miller's, placing their hopes and limited resources in his hands. "I need coffee," he muttered. In the hospital cafeteria, Blake and Samantha sat with steaming cups processing the night's events. "What happens to the women now?" Blake asked. "Those with families will be reunited after medical clearance and initial statements," Samantha explained. "The others, especially those from overseas, will be connected with support organizations specializing in trafficking recovery." And Whitley Davis says they have enough evidence for multiple life sentences. His operation crossed state lines, involved minors, and included international victims. The federal prosecutors are confident. Blake nodded, relief mingling with exhaustion. The adrenaline that had carried him through the night was fading, leaving bone-deep fatigue in its wake. "You should be proud," Samantha said quietly. "Most PIs spend their careers catching cheating spouses and insurance frauds. You saved lives, Blake." He managed a tired smile. "We saved lives. I couldn't have done this without you partners then," Samantha suggested, raising her coffee cup. "Partners," Blake agreed, tapping his cup against hers. 6 months later, Blake straightened his tie as he waited outside the federal courthouse. The morning air was crisp, carrying the first hints of autumn. News vans lined the street, reporters eager to cover the highest-profile human trafficking case the city had seen in decades. "Nervous?" Samantha asked, appearing beside him in a crisp charcoal suit. "A little," Blake admitted. "Testifying is different than investigating. Just tell the truth. The recording and photos do most of the work." Inside, the courtroom was packed. Blake recognized several families of the rescued women, including Rebecca Miller, who nodded encouragingly as he passed. Ethan Whitley sat at the defense table, immaculate in an expensive suit, his expression betraying no emotion. His eyes tracked Blake coldly as he made his way to the witness stand. "Mr. Preston," the prosecutor began after preliminaries, "please explain to the court how you came to investigate the defendant." Blake recounted Rebecca's initial visit, the pattern of disappearances, and the months of surveillance. When asked about his decision to pose as a delivery driver, he explained the necessity of gathering concrete evidence. "The recording device was active during your entire interaction with Mr. Whitley?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes, from the moment I arrived until I left the property." They played portions of the recording, Whitley's casual admissions about owning women echoing through the hushed courtroom. Blake described finding the basement where the women were held, the manifest detailing their purchase prices, and the scheduled transport to Baltimore. During cross-examination, Whitley's attorney, a sharp-featured man with calculating eyes, attempted to discredit Blake's evidence. "You entered Mr. Whitley's home under false pretenses, correct?" "Yes, and you had no warrant or legal authority to record conversations or take photographs inside his residence." "No, but so your evidence was obtained illegally." The prosecutor stood. "Objection. Mr. Preston was acting as a private citizen, not a law enforcement officer. The exclusionary rule doesn't apply." "Sustained," the judge ruled. The defense attorney shifted tactics. "Mr. Preston, you were paid to find Amy Miller, correct?" "Yes. And wouldn't a dramatic rescue from a trafficking ring be more lucrative for your struggling business than simply locating a runaway?" "Objection," the prosecutor called. Argumentative. Sustained. After Blake's testimony, the most powerful witnesses took the stand, the survivors themselves. Amy Miller spoke clearly and courageously about her abduction, captivity, and the psychological manipulation Whitley and his associates had employed. "He told us our families had forgotten us," she testified, "that no one was looking for us. After weeks of isolation and threats, you start to believe it." Other women shared similar stories, each account building a damning picture of Whitley's operation. Several broke down during testimony, the trauma still fresh despite months of counseling throughout it all. Whitley remained impassive, occasionally whispering to his attorney but showing no remorse or reaction to the devastating testimony. On the trial's final day, Blake sat with Samantha in the crowded gallery as the jury returned after just 4 hours of deliberation, a promising sign. "On the count of human trafficking, we find the defendant guilty." The foreman continued through all 28 counts, the word guilty punctuating each charge like a hammer striking nail. Only when the last verdict was read did Whitley's composure finally crack, his face contorting with rage as he was led away in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Blake. "How does it feel to be the key witness in bringing down Ethan Whitley's trafficking network?" Blake glanced at Rebecca and Amy Miller, standing together near the courthouse steps. "I'm just glad those women are home with their families where they belong." The recovery center occupied a renovated Victorian home on the outskirts of the city, its grounds peaceful and secure. Blake parked his car newer and more reliable than his previous vehicle and gathered the small gift bag from the passenger seat. The center had opened 3 months ago, funded partially by assets seized from Whitley's criminal enterprise. It served as both a healing space for trafficking survivors and an advocacy headquarters for prevention and awareness. Blake signed in at the security desk, now a familiar visitor. The receptionist smiled in recognition. There in the garden, she informed him. Therapy group just finished. He found them on the back patio, Amy Miller and 4 other survivors, sharing tea and conversation in the afternoon sunshine. Amy spotted him first, waving him over. Blake. Perfect timing. We were just discussing the university outreach program. In the years since her rescue, Amy had transformed from victim to advocate. After intensive therapy, she'd channeled her experience into educating others, speaking at colleges about trafficking warning signs and prevention strategies. How did yesterday's presentation go? Blake asked, setting the gift bag on the table. 200 students, Amy reported proudly. And the psychology department wants to incorporate our materials into their curriculum. Another survivor, Madison, nodded. 3 girls approached us afterward, saying they'd been contacted by talent scouts with suspicious offers. We connected them with the FBI's prevention team. That's 3 who won't end up where we did, a third woman added quietly. Blake opened the gift bag, revealing a framed certificate. This came through officially today. The Blake and Samantha Preston Foundation has been granted 501c3 status. Amy clapped her hands together. That's wonderful. Now donors can get tax deductions. Exactly, Blake confirmed. And we've received our first major donation, a grant to expand the university awareness program to 5 more campuses. The foundation had been Samantha's idea. After Whitley's conviction, their private investigation firm had been flooded with cases too many for them to handle personally. Rather than simply turning people away, they had established the foundation to support anti-trafficking education and victim recovery. Rebecca Miller emerged from the center carrying a tray of cookies. She'd become a fixture at the recovery center, providing maternal support to young women whose own families were distant or unsupportive. Blake, I hoped you'd visit today. She set down the tray and embraced him warmly. Did you tell them about the grant? Just did, he confirmed. And the other news? Rebecca prompted. Blake smiled. The FBI has officially adopted our prevention curriculum for their community outreach programs. Agent Davis says it's already making a difference. The women exchanged excited glances. Their experiences transformed into educational materials. We're now helping protect others from similar fates. That as they celebrated this milestone, Blake's phone vibrated with a text from Samantha. New case. A possible trafficking connection. Teen missing from Westridge area. The work never ended. For every Whitley behind bars, others continued preying on vulnerable young people. But now they faced a networked response: law enforcement, survivors, advocates, and investigators working together to dismantle trafficking operations and support victims. I have to go, Blake told the group. New case. Amy's expression grew serious. Someone missing. Blake nodded. Samantha's already gathering background information. Let us know if we can help, Amy said, the other survivors nodding in agreement. Sometimes victims respond better to those who've been through it. As Blake drove away from the recovery center, he reflected on how much had changed in a year. His struggling one-man pie operation had evolved into a partnership with Samantha, supplemented by the non-profit foundation. More importantly, the work had purpose beyond mere bill-paying. His phone rang. Samantha calling with details about the new case. 16-year-old girl, she reported. Missing 48 hours, police calling it a runaway, but her social media shows contact with an older man offering modeling opportunities. Blake felt the familiar determination rising within him. I'm on my way. The pattern was recognizable now, the red flags evident to his trained eye. This time they wouldn't need 6 months of investigation. This time they had resources, expertise, and connections. This time they might reach her before she disappeared completely. Tell the family we'll be there in 30 minutes, Blake said, accelerating toward their office. We're going to find their daughter.